Welcome back to Beyond the Bite. I'm your host, Eddie Aldrete. It all came down to 2 votes at the San Antonio City Council to help determine the future of Project Marvel and a downtown arena for the San Antonio Spurs. There's a lot to unpack here, but the primary issue now is Bexar County voters have a lot more clarity when they go to the polls in November. Here to help me with context, insight, and analysis are 2 political professionals in San Antonio who are great observers of political theater as well as public policy and politics. So joining me are Centro CEO Trish DeBerry and partner at Spire Risk Management, Kevin Wolff, both of whom are former county commissioners from Precinct 3. So Trish, Kevin, welcome.
Thank you.
Happy to be here.
So have you ever been in a situation where so much has happened in such a short period of time you don't know where to start?
Yeah, I was scared coming here today because, looking at some of the things we were going to talk about, I'm like, oh, good God, I could spend all day on just this one item.
Go ahead.
Well, typically, an elected official that gets into office, right? I mean, you're kind of minding your P's and Q's because you're trying to feel your way around. And this is somebody who's an outsider who's come into office, which I'm all in favor of, right? I mean, as a county commissioner, I had been involved in campaigns, but I had worked in the private sector. Right. And I think there are definite strengths for somebody not being a career politician. So, I mean, I think that was the hope and the aspiration, but it was on from day one, right? Regarding CCRs, picking that battle, a lot of political capital expended there. And I want to say this. I'm a very strong female, and people would have accused me on Commissioner's Court of having sharp elbows sometimes. But
have you been outmatched?
But yeah, I have. And I admire the mayor's passion, tenacity, her want and desire to be able to espouse an opinion. Right. But sometimes, and I learned this too as a county commissioner, I probably was a little bit aggressive, obviously with the sheriff, and looking back, and there are ways for you to take a step back and say, hey, I want to make my point. I want to demand accountability. But maybe there are better ways to be able to skin this cat, right? With a little bit more diplomacy. So that's my hope.
And Kevin, you've been in that situation too, both on the council as well as in the commissioner's court, entering into a new space and trying to stake your ground, but also trying to build relationships.
One of the lessons my dad taught me is no one ever learned anything while they were running their mouth. and to expand on that, whether it was city council, whether it was commissioner's court, I spent the first 3 months doing nothing but listening and trying to figure out, okay, how do things really get done here? Who does what? Those types of things. Before really stepping out there. I can remember after my first council meeting, all of our, new council people were, gave their 2 cents worth. I didn't say anything at all that first meeting. And the reporter covering City Hall at that time was Greg Jefferson. And he comes up to me afterwards and he says, "You were the only one that didn't say anything. Why not?" And I said, "Well, I didn't have anything to say, and perhaps when I do have something to say, people like you will actually listen." So take some time, figure out how things work.
Yeah, what's the lay of the land?
Yeah.
Right.
So I guess one thing that comes to mind along that vein is I think of Governor Rick Perry and Governor George W. Bush because I think those 2 governors spent the most amount of time just walking onto the House floor, greeting members of the House, what's going on, hey, tell me about this bill that you filed. I have an issue with this last paragraph. If you can help me resolve that, I'll sign your bill and I'll stand up at a press conference and we'll do it together. That's part of the relationship building process, but clearly this is not the way that she came into office.
Right. Well, I think Hardberger did a remarkable job working council. I mean, I think
I guess I didn't identify when I said she. I mean, Mayor Gene Ortiz.
Yeah, I mean, there are lessons that could be really learned from him. There were concerns and doubts when Mayor Hardberger got into office because clearly he was, to the far left, right? And so
he was Chief Justice of the Fourth Court of Appeals.
Right, exactly.
And a lot of people were very nervous.
Right, exactly.
By the time he left office, he could walk on water.
Yes, and that was because he knew who he was, but he also knew that he had to build consensus, right? And it means getting out of your office. It means walking into council offices saying, hey, we have this, obviously, item. I would love to have your support. Let's talk through this. And so ultimately, maybe a couple agreed to disagree with him, but there was still mutual respect in an old-fashioned way, in a sense of, listen, we're going to agree to disagree on this, and I don't dislike you personally, but I just don't agree with you on this issue. But it doesn't mean, and I said it at council yesterday, this does not mean just because we don't agree on this issue that we cannot walk lockstep on various and sundry initiatives, whether it's an affordable housing bond, whether it's pre-K for SA, an expansion of that program. I've worked very closely with COPS Metro, hand in hand, right? PGA, we were at opposite ends, right? Mm-hmm. And probably opposite ends for 10, almost 12 years. The most controversial project in Bexar County history. Yeah. But we got to a place where there was compromise, and now it's the most environmentally friendly development in Bexar County history or whatever. But as much as you dislike COP's mantra, which is no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, it's true. This is how the game works, right? We oppose each other here, but we're in lockstep with each other on something else.
Well, you have to live to fight another day.
Yes.
This is not the only issue. So, Kevin, I want to go back to the beginning of the week. Actually, going back even further than that, I would say, and tell me if you disagree with me, but I think a turning point was in the special B session where Mayor Jones turned to City Manager Eric Walsh and said, Manager Walsh, I'm directing you to stop negotiating with the Spurs. And he responded by saying, well, I'm hearing a consensus that I need to keep negotiating with the Spurs, which then caused her to turn to City Attorney Andy Segovia, asking for a vote. And he said, no, you can't take a vote because it wasn't on the agenda. Mm-hmm. So do you believe that was a turning point?
That was certainly the straw that broke a lot of camels' backs. Mm-hmm. I don't know if she didn't or doesn't understand that this is, not a strong mayor form of government, or what it is, a weak mayor form of government. At the end of the day, she's one more vote. That's it. She is the mouthpiece for the government, but she's not the boss. A majority of council is the boss.
Mm-hmm. Beyond the Bite is powered by Bridgewater Consulting Group, partnering with communities to deliver smarter utility strategy, modern infrastructure solutions, and results grounded in real experience. Together, we're building smarter, more reliable, and more resilient utility systems now and for the future. Now, back to the program. All right, so on that point, you were in the Navy. Mm-hmm. So someone said to me, she was in a vertical environment, and now she's moved to a horizontal environment where you're one of 11 and hasn't made that transition.
In my book, that's a zero excuse. I spent 8 years in the military. I know I didn't go on to council and treat my colleagues like they worked for me. You have to build consensus, and you have to do it across the line. Trish mentioned Phil Hardberger. Phil and I are different ends of the spectrum on the political piece. But when that mayor wanted something, he didn't summon you down to his office or order you to do this. He walked to you. He came to you, and he sat down, and you had a rational conversation. And to Trish's point, sometimes you'd agree to disagree, and you'd move on. I was very lucky that he was the mayor at that time. We were able to get a lot of really good stuff done because we worked as a body. And that does not mean we agreed all the time. There were times where we would get into knockdown, drag-out fights, but they were always done respectfully. And being in the military is not an excuse for acting the way she's been acting.
Trish, I think this is an important point because he not only got up out of his office and go down, just pop his head unannounced. Hey, you got a minute? I need to talk to you about this CCR. I think we can work together, but I have one little hurdle I need to overcome on this.
Right.
He would also call people in the community. I used to get 6 to 8 calls a year from him saying, how's it going? What's happening? Is there anything you need? Is there anything I can do for you? Are we doing okay down here at council? I'd love your feedback and your opinions.
Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of Phil Hardberger. Despite where he came from, decisions he made, obviously when he was on the Fourth Court of Appeals, he was masterful at the art of relationships, right? Compromise, trying to strike that. And I would tell you, Eddie, one of the things that was most meaningful to me regarding Phil Hardberger, it was a tough battle, right, for county judge, and got through that in a week after I lost. And it's always difficult to lose, there's no question, because you put it all out there, right? A lot of energy, a lot of emotion, a lot of brain space taken up. It's exhausting. And then you put all of that into it, and then you lose, and it's just like, you have to take a moment and grieve, because you do, right? Phil Hardberger was the first man to call me. He said, hey, just want to touch base. I know it's always better to win than it is to lose, but I want to take you to lunch because I want to tell you I think you're a heck of a gal, right? And I think you need to keep charging, right?
That's class.
He was the first person he did not have to do that.
Yeah.
And so when I talk about relationships matter, they do, especially in this town.
Oh, and let's talk about when you don't develop those relationships. So look, we've got a lot of tactical examples here of where we don't agree with how our current mayor is handling things. We need to start thinking about what the long-term damage is here. You've got new 4-year terms. You've got a lot of really, really important things coming up, whether it's a deficit on the budget, whether it's the fact that CPS has to put in tons of new infrastructure, so does SAWS. These are all very, very difficult decisions. And then on the political side, you have I think, at least during the race, a Hispanic female who has now stepped in to a role where you need strong females like yourself, Trish. But what is she doing to that demographic going forward? What happens to the next person that fits that demographic that could make a really good mayor and they get tied to, that last person was this? Those are real effects.
So if you look at some of the early decisions that she made do not impact the general public, how they sit on the dais, asking them to lock their phones in a box in executive session. And while those...
asking people to sit down.
Yes, in public. The general rule of thumb is you praise in public and you scold. And
exactly.
That was a conversation that could have been had privately.
Right, for sure.
But you begin to develop, as a council member, scar tissue over all these issues. And then that led us up to the District 10 Budget Town Hall meeting where she came and Councilman White agreed with her chief of staff that she could speak briefly as long as she stuck to the budget, because the city manager, Eric Walsh, was going to come back at a later date to discuss Project Marvel. And she quickly went into Project Marvel, and they had a little public disagreement. But that begins to, I think, form the foundation for what happened this week. So that happened on Monday. On Wednesday, Trish, the press conference that she kind of entered, that was hospitality industry, chamber, Centro, and other
bars, restaurant owners,
right.
Small businesses, the ambassador operation, right.
And she entered herself and waxed poetically for 10 minutes or longer, which took a lot of people by surprise, and then ended up into a Q&A with Spurs Jesus, who seemed to get the better of her.
I think so.
But which then led to the city council A session on Thursday and the two votes. So what patterns did you see this week that led you to believe where she was going to go with everything?
Well, it certainly started with the District 10 budget meeting, which I don't believe until, forget where I saw it, but there was an interview and she said, well, I'm going to be at the District 10, budget meeting today, which I think, I don't know.
She said it at her press conference on the steps of City Hall.
Okay. So I don't think she'd given Mark White a heads up that she was going to be there. So, listen, I mean, it's a very aggressive, combative tactic. And I think respect, right? You want respect, you have to earn it. I don't know that was a great way to be able to do that, is to hijack the District 10 budget meeting, hijack the press conference that we had, which, by the way, was unexpected, but we were ready should it happen because of what had happened at D10. And at the end of the day, too, you afford the mayor respect no matter what, which is what we did. Give her due, let her speak her piece. But I just think it's kind of in poor form because the office is supposed to, I believe, hold a certain amount of decorum, right? And like I said, dignity, integrity, all of those things. And I'm just not seeing that right now. And by the way, listen, I feel the same way about the highest office in the land, which is the White House, right? I feel like that office is supposed to operate with that as well. But we're in a new time and a new era. And so it makes it a lot more difficult. Because if we had not given her the opportunity to be able to speak, then what happens then? A spectacle, right? It's a complete meltdown. So, yeah, I mean, I just kind of felt like moving in to council yesterday. Her approach, even with Peter John Holt, was exactly the same as D10, the press conference. And then it became more like a COPS Metro accountability session from the dais, which is not okay.
It's not okay.
Yes or no?
Well,
that's no.
Well, and you go back
you
to,
don't do that.
I think the Express News editorial on Friday, August 22nd, said that after this, what's her long game? Well, she has said that early childhood development was a big issue, pre-K for SA. And in the editorial, they said, you know who else is very strong and supportive of pre-K for SA? Peter
John
Holt.
Holt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The
So,
guy you drug across the coals. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the came down to those two votes. Her item failed, the strategic pause, and then obviously the one that was put forth by the 7 council members to adopt the term sheet. Mm-hmm. Here's something I want to ask you, because Trish, you've been very public about this. The items in the term sheet. While the final document may have just been recently released, the individual pieces have been known for a very long time.
So, yes. Well, it's what I said at the press conference. The faces on the dais have changed, but staff has remained constant. And to your point, Kevin, this is a strong city manager form of government, like it or not. Eric Walsh is the CEO, right? So he has been negotiating terms with the Spurs as well as Ben Gorzel. Andy Segovia has been in on those conversations. We do have some council members that were reelected that have been a part of the process. So while they hadn't been made public on the dais, I think it's naive to think that nobody had a good idea of what was going to be in the term sheet. I mean, like I said, you would either have to be stupid or super naive as a politician or elected official not to know that. So this should not come as a surprise to anyone. We all knew, I think even from a public standpoint, what the Spurs and the county and the city were looking at, which was venue tax at $500 million split now between what's going to happen in redevelopment on the east side and the venue tax. But the Spurs were like, we're in for $500 million. We're also hoping the city will be in for a similar amount. So we all kind of knew what the similar amount was. Now it's under that, right? It's $489 million. But there's been no rush to judgment here. I have huge issues associated with that because it has not been.
Kevin, this is, to your point, something that's been talked about for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, the mayor has treated it as if it's a brand new issue. This is a issue that this community, a bunch of current electeds and a bunch of former electeds have been working on for at least the past year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
2 years.
2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way you handled that interruption of the press conference, both the day of and then the next day at council, was pristine. You were uber respectful.
Thank you.
You gave her the pathway to mend
Right.
things that she's broken. So I
Thank you.
I didn't mean to digress, but I had to thank her for that, and I hope the mayor follows through with that. But yeah, it's it's not new. It's new to her for some reason, and that's why I say, it drives me crazy when, someone comes in and does some of the things that she does, especially at the local government level. The local government level is the level that touches our day-to-day lives
Closest
more
to
than
the people.
anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And you can't play legislator, whether it's state or federal, at the local level. You got to get stuff done. And the only way to get stuff done is to build those kind of relationships. And if you're incapable of doing that, you will fail in this job.
I remember before I moved to San Antonio, I was involved in campaigns in Laredo and in the Rio Grande Valley and here in San Antonio. And it was very easy to throw a bomb and not have to worry about the consequences until I moved here.
Yeah.
And then realized I have to live amongst the people I'm lobbing a bomb at, or our kids are on the same soccer team.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's what we talk about, right? The seventh largest city, but the biggest small town in the world, right? Where relationships do matter.
But I also want to bring up to your point about Trish, there was also a great post on X, I think it was by Michael Carlos from the San Antonio Current, that Trish DeBerry, Central Workers, and Spurs Jesus is one heck of a coalition.
Right?
Because it was a great photograph of when you went up to testify. And by the way, I know that I think Rudy Garza now wants to take a CPS lineman up to the next time he goes up to City Hall.
Exactly.
Yes.
So
well,
you inspired
for sure.
him.
And listen, it gives me an opportunity to talk about our ambassador operation, which I'm so blessed in the position that I'm in because we are a second chance operation, right? 40 to 50% of our population at Centro for the ambassadors come from either lived experience, which means they have been homeless, or it's their first job out of sobriety. We're probably one of very few organizations, right, that takes a look and says, hey, yes, let's do this, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, our retention rate, I've got people that have been with Centro for 22 years, 15 years, 18 years, because we have established a culture in which not only do we give them second chances, but on average, they make $18 to $22 an hour, right? Which is not necessarily the most, right, of anybody at this table making. But as one of my ambassadors, when the mayor called them out at the press conference, said, I make $19 an hour, ma'am. And I am very comfortable with that living, and I am very happy.
Yeah, that was a beautiful moment.
It was.
It was a beautiful moment. And as Mama Bear, because I'm uber protective of my ambassadors, I almost came out of my skin.
Yeah.
Well, it was a
Which
little.
is, don't pick on my people.
It was a little bizarre in the fact that she asked 3 times for the exact number, the hourly rate that he was making, and then she annualized it. But to publicly, pressure someone to reveal their salary was, back to your point about not really within the decorum or dignity of the office.
No, and I just incredibly disrespectful.
Yeah.
And really disrespectful of who they are and the work that they do in downtown every single day.
Well, that's a microcosm of what she's doing to her colleagues as well. It's a level of disrespect that is just, it's unacceptable. And if I were serving with her, I'd be pushing back just as hard. There's,
Right. Right. I mean, listen, one point I want to make, because Kevin and I were both, right? We're Republicans in Precinct 3 on Commissioner's Court. We were outnumbered, right? We're the only.
All the time.
Republican voice. But guess what? In order for us to get anything done, we have to coalesce votes, whether you're on the other side of the aisle or you're not, right? If we're going to get anything done, we're going to have to do that. And so I think Kevin and I were really good, right, about diplomacy, relationships, that we knew smartly what we had to do. And that means you compromise. Sometimes you give up a little, but then you get a little, all those things. That is how government works most effectively. It does. About the art of compromise. We talk about it all the time. Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill fought like cats and dogs on the floor, right? And they went down, they had a drink at Capitol Grill or wherever, right? Had some scotches, and then came back out on the floor and said, we've worked this out. Now, it doesn't happen like it used to, obviously, but I do believe the government is at its best when we are working together. And so far, I just don't see that.
The first person to show up at President Reagan's hospital bed after he shot was Speaker Tip O'Neill.
Yes, right.
And the speaker asked if he could pray with the president. It was a very moving story.
Yeah.
And then another odd couple was Republican Senator Orrin Hatch from Utah and Democratic Senator Ted Kennedy from Massachusetts, who would fight on the floor of the Senate. And Senator Hatch used to say, I wanted to strangle Kennedy on the times where he got the better of me. But he would just walk up and totally pull the rug out from under me and say, hey, you want to get the wives together and go out to dinner tonight? You want to go sailing in Nantucket? I mean, it was just, a very unique relationship. You see that a little bit with Councilman Mark White and Jalen McKee Rodriguez.
Right.
You see,
or even at this point, it's Phyllis and Mark who are working.
And Terry Castillo partnering with really Marina Aldrete Gavito and Mark on the CCR issue. So, Kevin.
Which should be representative government.
Yes.
It should be.
Because the one thing about that was, you had someone from the left in Terry, you have a moderate in Marina, and you have a conservative in Mark, and they're all agreeing that this is not the way something should be done. So they came together and fought it. But on the CCR issue, this was something, again, it was another loss by the mayor when the council said no, because they stood firm on, they had been through the battle and the negotiation and exhaustive process the year before with Mayor Nuremberg. Yeah. So, Kevin, how do you find a win if every time you go to a vote, she lost the CCR issue, she lost her strategic pause, and then she lost the term sheet election to accept the term sheet? Where does she go from here?
She's not going to have a win unless she changes the way she's interacting, not only with her colleagues, but with the community as a whole. Even folks on a political spectrum that you would assume would be very tight with her, District 5, came out against what she was doing on the CCR piece. And the other piece that hasn't been brought up yet, and it should be, is she wiped every single CCR that was going through the process
right
before she was there. That's not her position to do. And that was a lot of hard work that a lot of bunch of council people, both existing and former, had been working on. Now they got to start all over because somebody comes in and thinks that they have that kind of power. That she even said it's like the legislature. You start all over. This is not the legislature.
Yeah.
You know, I think that a member of the council told me, my wife Christina and I were having a cup of coffee with this council member, and Christina asked, "Is it what she's proposing on the CCR issue, or is it how she went about proposing?" And the answer was yes. And this is a member of the council who is more politically aligned with the mayor, but who was bothered by the process and the lack of outreach. And she seems to, there's a lot of directive by memo and a lot of, well, let's just take a vote. And so my question is, you know, Trish, where does she go from here?
It's a very good question. You know, I mean, it's confusing because I would think, here's my issue on the CCR. To your point, the year before, vetted, lots of dialogue, you know, about it. There was a process, council voted, and then I don't understand why expend the political capital
On a process issue.
On a process issue, right?
It was not a policy issue. It was a process issue.
Yeah, I was very confused by that, right? I mean, why put it all out there and go to the mat knowing you're probably not going to get what you want out of it? And like I said, I thought it was needless. And so I would tell you, even on her argument associated with the term sheet, I have seen this argument work before. Why did it take 10 to 12 years to get the PGA done? Why do we have to move so fast? You were part of one of those councils, right? Let's take our time with this, right? I mean, it's true what they say, though. Time kills deals. It did kill the PGA Village, which were the touring pros teaching, right? Or the teaching pros. But fortunately, PGA of America came back and said, hey, we've been through these battles before. We'll go. We'll fight it. But it was almost dead in the water.
Yeah, I remember.
I remember calling your dad.
Oh, yeah.
Who was overseas. And I'm like, I need your help, right? Like now. Because PGA of America now wants to come back, and I need you to talk to him and get it back. But, I mean, the very real cost opportunity here, which is what I tried to relay at the press conference.
Yes.
Like
The
Spurs,
cost of indecision.
Spurs could leave.
Right.
Like, I don't understand why nobody believes that that's a reality. It's just a small market team, right? At the end of the day, it's a business enterprise.
That's right.
So you really want to call their bluff? So, yeah, if she had delivered that message, which is, you know, salient message that people can say, yeah, maybe we don't have enough of the facts. Let's pause a little bit or whatever. If it had been delivered in a way that I think was probably a little less combative and my way or the highway kind of approach and hostile to a certain extent, we may be in a different place today. But it's not just about the message, as you know, Eddie. It is about delivery of the message. And, you know, I learned a little bit about that regarding accountability at the jail, demanding that the sheriff take that as a priority and not buy the boat. And I probably should, when I look back, probably shouldn't have said some of the strident things that I said looking back, right? But
when you're in the trenches,
we learn,
yes,
right? We learn, and then I learned a lot from that. So when I was at council yesterday, listen, my hope of all hopes is that I want to work with Mayor Jones. We had a great conversation before she became mayor about homelessness, housing, affordability, all of those things, pre-K for essay, you know, how we got that done, all those things. Like, I want to be able to work with her, and I think the community does on these issues that are important. But when you're treated the way you're treated, which is with you're dismissed, you're disrespected, you wonder, well, why do I want to help, right?
All right, I'm going to come back to that disrespect. But, Kevin, there's a trial lawyer in Silsbee, Texas, outside of Beaumont named Jefferson Fisher, who has 6 million followers on Instagram. And he really doesn't talk about the law. He talks about communications and resolving conflict. But one of his strongest, hardest rules is never focus on winning the argument and winning the points, because you will lose the relationship.
Yes.
And it seemed like yesterday, after she lost both of the items, she was still trying to win the points. She did it with Peter John Holt. And then she did it by saying, I want to take this to a vote, this bond, which doesn't need to go. State law does not require you to go to vote, but she wants. So on Friday morning, August 22nd, the morning anchor at News 4 San Antonio, David Chancellor, said publicly what I think a lot of people were wondering. Is she going to campaign for the item in November, or is she going to campaign against it, the county venue tax?
Based on what we've seen so far, I have to highly anticipate that she will campaign against it. This is someone I don't think can ever admit they're wrong and take a step back. Trish mentioned, she would like to double think how, she handled a particular situation in the past. I know I had a few of those.
We all
do. But it's the person that can recognize when they've gone too far, and then work to come back from that. That person becomes successful. The podcast you mentioned, that's like a master's course in how to develop and maintain relationships. Okay, it's not about winning every single battle. If that's all you're focused on, you will lose the war.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what's happening here. The only logic I can throw at it, and this is a huge rationalization as to why she's acting this way, is and we see this nationally. The extremes control the political message. Governance gets done in the middle. Mm-hmm. She hasn't stopped running.
Yeah, it's you campaign, you govern, and then you campaign again, and it seems like we're still stuck in the campaign phase.
She's utilizing the existing campaign machine she had to send out, whether it's text or social media. That's the campaign apparatus still operating when you're supposed to be governing right now.
So, you talked about some of the actions she's taking. And so this leads me to the next topic I want to talk about, and that's committee assignments. Oh. I guess it took, a lot of people who follow the council process are used to a standard that's been upheld. When Ivy Taylor was mayor, she didn't like bringing things to a vote unless she had a 9-2 vote. If she wasn't at 9 votes, she wouldn't put it on the agenda. And Trish, she would go back to you and say, let's keep negotiating. Right. Tell me where you're willing to give, and I'll tell you where I'm willing to give. And which would help her get to 9.
Right.
Her philosophy was the more united we are, the better we look as a city. So then the committee assignments come out, and I guess part of that process was traditionally you put the most senior people of the council on governance because they know how the system is run, and they know how not to make rookie mistakes. She ignored that philosophy. And she also, I guess I could understand from a political standpoint her not giving Mark White a chairmanship. And I'm not quite sure. I have a little bit of suspicion why she didn't do that with Marina Aldrete Gavito, but Terry Castillo was, I guess, the big shock.
It was shocking.
Because she had endorsed Gina on the campaign and was going to be a natural ally on a lot of these issues, but she not only not got on governance, but she also did not get a committee chairmanship.
This community is not stupid. The mayor's rationale for why she did that was a lie, period. It was pure retaliation. pure retaliation because some members on that council disagree with how she's doing things and what she wants.
But I guess the big surprise, Trish, was Terry might have opposed her on the CCR issue, but after that, she was going to be an ally on the Spurs
Right,
and an ally on the budget
Yes.
and an ally
Yes.
on other things.
And she stayed true to that.
Yeah, she does. Yeah, I mean, listen, I thought Terry Castillo's comments, even on the dais, about why she would not be there to support the term sheet, I thought respectable.
Sure. Yes.
I mean, she knows her constituency, what she wants to fight for them, and at the end of the day, we all want that from someone who is our elected representative. You're going to fight for me all the way. But I thought Terry delivered it with class, and I thought it was incredibly intelligent. And I think Terry is one of the smartest people on the council. Now, we may not agree on everything again, but
You can never underestimate her.
no, you can't. And for the mayor to exact a pound of flesh, which is basically what happened, from someone that should be a consistent ally, is just dumbfounding to me. The wheels turn in my head, and I'm like, I don't understand why you would do that. I mean, you made basically a political enemy of someone who should be, like I said, your consistent ally. Yeah.
If I were the mayor and listened to Terry's justification,
It was awesome.
I would be thinking in the back of my head, boy, I wished I'd done it that way. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just got my butt kicked because I didn't do it that way.
Right.
Okay. While I vehemently disagree with Terry's opinion, I wholeheartedly respect how she gave it.
Right.
I think the other one that was very admirable was the new council member, Rick Galvan. He made it a point in the closing moments of the hearing to say, I just want to say to the Spurs, nobody here hates you.
Right.
We may want more information or, I'm fighting for my constituents, but we all love the Spurs and you're a blessed part of the community.
Right. Yeah.
The other one that I got to give kudos to is I felt like I was watching a horse race. And they're off. Here comes Mark White, followed by Terry Castillo
Right.
and Marina Aldrete Gavito, coming from the outside.
Outside,
Is
right,
Phyllis
right,
Villagran.
yeah, right.
Phyllis was the first to,
Make the point of order.
several, and also to bring it back to the point you made a minute ago, Trish, and that was. This comes down to, do you trust the Spurs or do you not?
Yes.
They're a huge part of not just the economic.
Right.
I think someone mentioned, it may have been Councilman White, I don't know that any economist or any
Would be able to
independent
put a
consultant.
price tag on what the Spurs mean to the community.
Yeah, because there
Yeah.
are things that you can't put a financial number to.
No, when they're in our DNA for as long as they have been, you can't put a price tag on that other than to say, and I've said this before, from the county dice when they were looking for monies to go out to the rim for the performance center.
Right.
I called Bobby up to the podium and I said, I want a commitment from you. You are not moving this team after I make a motion to appropriate $14 million for the performance center. Because if we lost the Spurs, it would be soul crushing to this community.
Well, we saw what happened when we lost AT&T.
Yes.
And then, we lost New Star when it got absorbed by Sunoco.
Right.
And we're feeling it not just in the pride and in the high-paid salaries, but also the philanthropy and the giving
Yes.
of not just the company. In the case of New Star, it was for homelessness and Haven for Hope. And in AT&T, it was those high-paid executives, too, that were sitting
Right.
on a lot of boards and donating a lot of money.
Well, and we haven't even talked about, from a negotiation standpoint, unprecedented community benefits agreement that is $75 million over 30 years that will go back into this community for overall benefit regarding nonprofit work, whether it's workforce development, whether it's affordable housing, whether it's expansion of pre-K for SA. I mean, Spurs started at 40 and have now gone up to 75. So kind of what I told the mayor from the podium yesterday is good on you for negotiating that. That's a win. It's a huge win for this community.
Huge win. And the simplest way to understand it is if you give to a charity, a nonprofit, the Spurs just gave $75 million, or are offering to give $75 million to the nonprofit of the city of San Antonio.
Yeah.
That's what they did.
You know, and that doesn't include some of the other things, the investment in the sports and entertainment district. And I want to bring up another point that I don't know that has been 2 points that haven't been stressed enough. Some people have brought them up, but I want to underscore them here today. Number one, none of the city of San Antonio dollars get paid until the Spurs have invested the $500 million on
there's a guarantee.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the second issue is the funding sources for the arena, specifically the project finance zone, which was allowed by the legislature. That's venue tax money that would normally go to the state. That's the state portion of the tax.
That's right.
That the state said you can now keep locally as long as it only goes to expand your convention center, fix your Alamo Dome, or build a new arena. It's not money that can be used for drainage or streets or sidewalks or anything else. So it's a use it or lose it. Okay.
Yep.
You know, I'm also reminded here, I guess, the big picture, which since we've talked about Mayor Hardberger so much, one of my favorite sayings of his was, "Don't major in minor issues."
I love that.
And you know how the fight over a process, the fight over the cell phones, it seemed like that hampered the mayor's ability to be able to build consensus after that.
Absolutely.
I mean, because traditionally you go for some low-hanging fruit, some easy wins, so you sort of build up the momentum to tackle the tough things.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So are the relationships on council repairable?
For the length of time that she has in office, because we extended term limits, she's got 4 years. She's only been in office 3 months. There's plenty. It's 3.5 years or more, right, to be able to repair those relationships. But I would tell you, it needs to start today.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of hurt feelings on that council. And listen, when you run for office, you got to have thick skin, right, no matter what. But it comes down to the basics, as you talked about, Eddie, which is dignity and decorum and humility that all have to be exercised at some point, and affording respect to somebody and earning respect. None of those things are really happening right now. And so I think for all of us, right, I think you can yell at me, you can scream at me all day long, right? Like that's part of the debate, the dialogue, and what we got into when we ran for office. But if you are dismissing me, cutting me off, condescending, at the end of the day, disrespecting me, that runs pretty dang deep, right? And I think it's kind of hard to go down a pathway of forgiveness until you come back and say, hey, there are two very simple words here. I'm sorry.
And it's not...
That goes a long way.
It does.
It's not just emotional feelings, but it's also knowing your political path. I'm not going to... It's learning that if I keep sticking my hand out and it keeps getting slapped, I'm going to stop sticking my hand out. It's not because I'm hurt. It's because I'm learning.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's the law of physics. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Yeah. All right. So, Kevin, we have 2 campaigns now. How do we win 2 campaigns? The first would be the Vote Yes campaign for the November venue tax, and the second would be the one in May for the bond elections that are going to include some infrastructure projects. I know one at the top of the list is that Bidle Creek area where the 13 people died in June, tragically from the floods. There's a strong desire to do something in that region. How do you put your campaign hat on, not your Stetson, but your campaign hat, and walk me through how you win those two campaigns?
Okay, so between now and November, the entire focus, both politically and in the community, is about passing the county's November election piece. That's it. Don't talk about, don't try to bleed the two together. Yes, they will bleed together in the future, but if you don't start with this one, the second one doesn't happen.
Right.
Okay, so keep your eyes focused on that. That's all this is about. You have to expect right now that if the mayor continues down their current path, they're not giving up. They're gonna, their sights are gonna turn. Okay, now I'm gonna turn towards the county in this upcoming vote. Individuals on the county, whether it's the county judge or the commissioners, may have a public fight on their hands being for this at the same time that the mayor of the city is against it. All right. So keep the focus both politically and from the community as a whole on what happens in November. You get past that November vote, okay? Then it becomes now I call it decorating. For instance, go back to the northern reach of the San Antonio River. It was a battle to get that done. Okay. Once we got it done, there was a whole bunch of little battles afterwards about, now that we've said it, now how do we make it pretty? Okay. How do we make it functional? Okay. Those were all separate battles after that. Win the big battle first, win the smaller battles later.
Trish.
Yeah. There is no doubt in my mind that there is going to be opposition because I do not think folks are going to go gently into that good night, right, associated with this campaign. So you're going to have a lot of opposition. And what wins the day, you know this as well as I do, Eddie and Kevin, even though the Spurs will bring a lot of money for a paid advertising campaign, all of those things, which it's layers, right? It all works together. But you've got to get out into the community. It is grassroots, grassroots, grassroots. High touch, multiple touch, personal touch, neighborhood associations, church groups, you name it. Walking into the lion's den, and making your case.
I think we saw that in the mayoral runoff race because Gina didn't really do TV. She put all her money into the field.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that tells you people want to be talked to. And sometimes it's a harder conversation and sometimes it's an easier conversation. But the one thing I've learned over the years in this community, having run campaigns and run for office, is that is the key to success. Yes.
All right. So final thoughts after this now. You have the budget coming up on September 18th, the budget vote, and there's going to be town halls all over the place. We've already started seeing some. How do you see that rolling out, Kevin?
So because the Marvel stuff, the Spurs stuff, it sucks all the oxygen out of the room. Yeah. Okay, when we started talking, I mentioned that there are big things that this city and this community has to deal with that are, go to the basic services and life support of the city. The city is facing something that it has not had to face in many, many, many years, and that's a true deficit, not a pretend deficit of, it looks like we're going to be short, and then CPS comes in and saves the day at right before the budget. Okay, no, this is a true deficit, and there's a lot of reasons for that. Whether it's not able to expand and take in more property tax, blah 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 blah. There was an article the other day where the county is still getting a 2% bump in their overall property tax revenue, but the city's getting a negative.
Right.
Okay, and that's because
that's a big difference.
Things are still growing in the county, and so the valuation is going up, but that's not happening in the city. Yeah. So that's where the danger of falling into a political operating mode. It's the next campaign, the November campaign. Okay, falling into that mode, which I just finished saying you have to focus on. Okay, which is true politically. Okay, but at the same time, you've got a whole bunch of governance stuff on the ground that has to be done now too, and that will add or detract from any sort of political campaign that you put forward. You saw that in the meeting, in the council meeting. You heard people talking about it, saying, well, how's this going to affect our deficit?
Yeah.
Right? And I think the arguments were made that, okay, this doesn't really have anything to do with that.
Yeah.
Right, but it makes it even harder
but,
because the D10 meeting was supposed to be a budget meeting.
Yes.
Which then became very acrimonious about Marvel and the strategic pause. And so I think ultimately the conversations regarding the budget do become a lot more complicated than they have in the past because, as Kevin says, we have 75 days until November the 4th. And so you can't hold back anymore regarding launching the campaign. But how do you answer the question about what was said on the dais in that, well, how does Marvel affect the budget deficit? I do think that's going to have to be, a question that's answered. And you can say it doesn't, it's two separate things, it's apples to oranges, but it's a huge edification process, which I think becomes a lot more difficult.
Yeah.
So in a recent email newsletter, former Councilman Greg Brockhouse said one of the issues for the several components that the mayor had to go through was the lack of a full staff. He was asking, where's the staffer that should have said, when you go to the D10 Budget Council meeting, there's going to be older residents, conservative residents.
Yep. Know your audience.
Know your audience.
Yeah.
And she's still not fully staffed up yet. So
he's not wrong about that. But hey, I'm a believer. Fish rots from the head down. She has to make those decisions. She has to recruit the people and hire the people and make sure that they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
That's another fail spot.
Yeah. Well, and I think, too, from a staff standpoint, you know this as well as I do, Kevin, you're supposed to have staff to kind of tuck you off that ledge when you're ready to go, right? Like you have somebody that says, a little more restraint here, right? We'll dial it back in or whatever. I know you want to go there, but don't. I don't think she's got that staff around her. And two, former Councilman Brockhouse and I do not agree necessarily on everything associated with his position on where we're going with the Spurs Arena. But I do think he has made some very relevant points, having been an office holder himself and run for the office of mayor, about what he would do differently. And I think there's agreement associated with how you deliver the message, where's the staff, why are you out there alone? This should not just be the mayor's show. It should be a dialogue. There are ways to be able to get your point across without being antagonistic and dismissive. And so I think Councilman Brockhouse has made some very strong points, right? So I think we all have, and we hope in the end, for the betterment of the entire community as well as the dais, that there's some heavy sighs and deep breaths that are taken. And she understands that there is a very strong willingness from this community to be able to help her. We want her to succeed.
Her success would be our success.
We do want her to succeed. I, as a strong female, every day, all day long, want her to succeed. Yes.
Well, it's hard to, I don't know that I can follow that. It's a good way to kind of conclude this. So Trish DeBerry, Kevin Wolff, thanks for coming out, and we will continue to explore where we go from here as a community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.